Hello everyone, this is Moniyasha from Dream Vision Creations, and today I'm going to be showing you how to essentially cut and hinge your own resin blank. And I'll be going over the tools, supplies, and the technique on doing this. This is essentially going to be the part one of a series of videos that I will be putting up on YouTube and going over the whole process of starting from a uncut resin blank going to a ready resin blank to the point where you can start furring your head. The first thing I'm going to go over here is the tools and supplies you'll need to start this project. You start with a resin blank, uncut. You can get one from us, or you can also get one from other makers out there online, but this is basically how ours look. Pretty much they're already all the flanges trimmed off on the inside of the masks and sanded down, so it's ready for you to start cutting and adding the hinges and parts to it. I will be showing you how to do a straight hinge on the feline, and I'll be showing you how to do a V hinge on the canine. So I already have this cut out a little bit to start doing the V, so it saves me some time. You will need a set of hinges from our web store. This right here will be the straight hinge pack. Essentially comes with 2 hinges, 2 plastic washers, 2 metal washers, 2 stainless steel springs, and 2 screws with 2 lock nuts. So that's what the straight hinge one is. The V hinge comes with 4 hinges that are slightly curved. So you'll be attaching 2 hinges on either side of the mask. All the other components are exactly the same as the straight hinge, doubles of all the parts. The tools you will need for a V hinge, you will need 4 clamps. For a straight hinge, only 2. You will need a screwdriver, Phillips head screwdriver, set of pliers, safety glasses for cutting to make sure that the plastic doesn't flee into your eyeballs, a set of work gloves, medium to heavy grade, for using the heat gun and for sanding and cutting, a set of nitrile or latex gloves for the glue, some 2-part epoxy glue. You can either get the super instant epoxy from Smooth On, which is what we highly recommend. It's what we use for attaching all of our hinges to our mask, and jaw sets. Essentially jaw sets and hinges. We also use it for attaching horns if we want permanent horns. But this stuff is like super quick. You mix it up and it is cured in 5 minutes. Rather solid plastic type glue. You can also get 2-part epoxy glues from Home Depot or Lowe's, but they will have a longer cure time to them. I think it's about, can range anywhere from 25 minutes to 24 hours for the glues from the hardware stores. You'll also need a mixing tongue press stick for mixing up the glue, and a piece of aluminum, which I gotta grab, or a piece of paper, but aluminum's better. For your sharp tools, you will need a box cutter for cutting the large areas. Retractable break-off blade box cutters are some of the nicer ones to use because it keeps a fresh blade going. A X-Acto or precision knife for doing the eyes, nostrils, and smaller areas. A Sharpie marker, so you can mark off where you need to make your holes for your springs, as well as lining up your hinges and lining up the holes for the straight hinge attachment screws and nuts. Coarse 60 grit sandpaper. You can go with 80 or 60 grit. You don't have to have a flat sandpaper block like I have. You can just go with plain old sandpaper, but you'll need this for sanding off all the sharp edges once you cut them, for along the mouth area, eye area, and sometimes the nose. You also need it to help scratch up the surface for your resin blank before you start attaching fur. The plastic is really nice and smooth, and in turn that makes it difficult for glue to attach to it, so you will need to use this to just scratch the surface before you glue. A heat gun, which you can usually get from Home Depot or Lowe's for 15 to 25 bucks, depending on the model. But you'll need this to help heat up the plastic before you start cutting into it, so it'll turn it more rubbery in texture and make it easier to cut. It's a lot cheaper to invest in a heat gun and an X-Acto knife for cutting it blank than it is to actually invest in a Dremel. But you could invest in Dremel if you want to. I think the cheapest one you can find is for $55. And a Dremel or a type of drill, you can also use an X-Acto knife and kind of drill out the holes for the springs and the hinge attachments, but it's just kind of easier just to use a drill because you get a more steady hole. But that is pretty much all of the parts. So I will go ahead and start working on hinging this. I'll grab a piece of aluminum foil first for the glues, but I'll set aside things that are going to be more towards the end of the video, and I'll keep out all the sharp objects for the beginning of the video. It is a standard piece of aluminum foil. Doesn't need to be too big, just enough for the glue to mix up on. So, glue, clamps, screwdriver, and pliers aside, as well as the hinges will be set aside. The canine. The gloves are for the glue, so those will also be set aside. Very important, safety goggles. Very safety goggles. Oh, actually I need the straight hinges here. Okay, so you put your gloves on. Reduce the chance of possible cuts and burns from either the heat gun or for the knives. And also, when you're working with this stuff, make sure you are in a well-ventilated area, either a larger size room or something that has like an AC or a fan going to help push the fumes out. Because this glue, you get really stinky, and it's not good for you to breathe in. Okay, when you get your resin blank, one of the first things you want to do is actually cut out this V right here. The V is pretty much for a couple different things. It's if you want to actually make a realistic head and do it in a Clockwork Creature style, it gives an area for the fur to kind of tuck into, so the mouth can open, and then the fur can tuck into that area. It also makes it open so the jaw moves more freely, and also makes it much easier for attaching hinges because you're still keeping this area connected when this is cut out, so the hinge will always be lined up where you need it to be. So the first things that I do is I heat up the inside of one of the V's. It's working in slow motions. The heat gun is on high. And if you do a favor to make sure that this camera is actually facing while I'm working, so I know where its point is.
Yeah, it's actually right on the head right now.
Okay, thank you. You will notice a color change. The black will start turning to a slight grayish tint. So you'll flip, go a little bit on the white. Keeping your hands as far away from the area you are heating up as possible. You'll notice it'll start to smoke just a little tiny bit. You don't want to heat it up to the point where it's turning brown, because then you're overheating it. You'll actually start to notice it's trying to separate on its own. So you use the X-Acto knife. Up and down, saw motion, a little bit at a time. Once we bleeds that much, it means you didn't heat it up enough. So heat it up more. Probably going a little too fast to heat that. There we go. It's starting to smoke a little bit. Again, those fumes, you don't want to breathe that in, so keep it far away from your face. When you start getting towards the end, just wiggle it. Don't try to force the knife. Pretty much just wiggling it back and forth. At this point, you should be able to just kind of bend it and just snap it off a little bit. Forgive me, I'm a little out of practice here. To remove the wedge. And you got all this extra stuff here which you want to clean off. Now the X-Acto knife works good for precision, but the box cutter works a lot better for the fact that it's a much sharper blade. It's got a little bit of a buildup of resin right here. That's why it's a little more difficult to cut. And this is what can sometimes happen to your mask if you heat it up too much. It actually cracked. So I'm actually going to show you how to fix a situation like that. I'm just using a knife to kind of get rid of some of this thickness in the jaw. And you can see a piece of plastic flinging everywhere, and that's why I am wearing the goggles. Because you cannot control where this plastic is going to end up going. There we go. So you cut your V out, and I thinned up the thickness of this edge. I'm going to do the same with the other side. start smoking. My blade is dull, so probably problems. So to make it safer, I actually just use my pliers and snap this for me, so I don't have to worry about the blade flinging off to oblivion. Oh, much better. And again, just trimming down. Okay. So the next step will be to attach the hinges. And in order to do so, you need to scratch up the surface of the mask. So I take my X-Acto knife, because it's got a wider blade, and I just start scratching. It's called scorching the plastic. I'm doing it at a slight angle. I'm not doing straight up and down, I'm actually going sideways to help make a nice little scratched up area. Do an X shape. Horizontal and vertical. And I do it right here on the edge on both sides. Just like that. It's nice to you actually feel the texture. Now I'll grab the 2-part glue, switch my gloves out for this precision, aluminum, and my mixing stick. Also, 1 set of clamps for left and right, and marker. You will also need to take your hinge, scratch off the surface of your hinge. So usually the shiny side the side going along the side of the mask. You'll have the matte side up. It really doesn't matter that much, but this side is usually flatter, slightly indented, so it makes it easier for the glue to stick to it. So you just take your X-Acto knife, and again, this is the flat edge. You want to keep this not scratched up. You want to scratch this end up. Doing those nice deep cuts. You don't have to do it as fast as I'm doing it. If it's the first time, do it slow. You don't want to cut yourself by accident. And that's all scratched up. Do the same for both hinges. If you're doing a V hinge, you would do this on all four. So I'm actually going to show you that on this canine. Get them both set up. Just like that. Now, start mixing up glue. These are equal parts, and it's kind of a gel-like form. So you just do 2 even squirts. You don't need very much for straight hinges. The B part's the stinky part. The A part doesn't have much of a smell, but the B part definitely stinks. Now take your mixing stick, and you will just swirl them up, going clockwise and counterclockwise, just kind of whipping it up like cake batter. That's why it's good to wear gloves. And since it has a 5-minute cure time, it does not take very long for this to start to heat up. So you don't have much more than a minute to work with it. Just do about half the amount. Put it on your hinge. Big old blob in the middle so it can spread out. Well, middle towards the top. You'll position it on your mask. You want the hole, the semi in the middle of the bottom hinge, the bottom jaw. Oops. Stay. Use your clamp and you clamp it in place. I use these kind of clamps because I can cinch it down and it can get tighter and tighter. I can adjust the tightness. Same thing with the other hinge. Again, you only have about a minute to work with this. The more glue you have, the faster it will cure. Yeah, some glue on my finger, so it's good to have paper towels on hand. Do the same thing on this side. And use your clamp. You can kind of wiggle it in the position and tighten it all the way. Now, while it is clamped like this, I take this opportunity to actually mark where this hole is, because that is where my screw and lock nut will go. And you want to make sure that it lines up. So you just pinch the jaw at the hinge, and you just take your marker and just circle around to mark where you need the drill. You do that on both sides. It's good to do it now while you're waiting for the glue to cure, because then you won't forget later if you didn't mark that hole, and then next thing you know, you separate that bottom jaw and you forgot to mark the hole. That's the whole point of this process. So I'll set that aside, and I'll show you how I do a V-hinge on this canine. I'll going to grab another set of clamps. So for the V-hinge you need 4 clamps. And the same thing, you'll take your second knife and scratch up this area at the top. The difference is now the V-hinge will actually be attached at 4 points in the mask instead of 2 points. So instead you will scratch up down here in the bottom jaw as well. That on both sides. Now let's set up the V-hinges. So you will have a left and a right. They'll be set up like this. Set the springs aside. So you will have 2 rubber washers, well, plastic washers, 2 silver washers, 2 screws, and 2 lock nuts. First thing you do is you set up your hinges. So essentially you want the screw to point away from your jaw. Pull into the screw. Put your plastic washer on. Put your V on. Put your metal washer on. And then put on your lock nut. Your lock nut will be facing out and away from your jaw. Okay. Now this has not been tightened down yet, so this is still very wiggly. And we'll do the same thing with the other side. Screw, plastic washer, V, metal washer, lock nut. Oops. Now I'll go ahead and start tightening these up. You do not want them wiggling around. So hold on to the lock nut with your pliers and use a screwdriver. You do not need a fancy screwdriver like this. The regular Phillips screwdriver will work just fine. And you want to tighten it to the point where you can't see the twisty part of the screw. You do not want it stiff like this. Like this is too stiff.